You weren't betrayed by a stranger. You were betrayed by someone who knew your laugh. Someone who had seen you at your worst and told you it was okay. Someone who sat across from you at dinner, smiled at your plans, and then, quietly, slowly, became the reason those plans fell apart. And the part that haunts you isn't the betrayal itself. It's that you didn't see it coming. You're good at reading rooms. You're perceptive. You figured people out before they figured themselves out. But somehow, with the people closest to you, the ones who knew you best, you were blind. And you've been carrying a question ever since. How did I miss it? Here's what nobody tells you. You didn't miss it because you weren't paying attention. You missed it because you were paying attention to the wrong thing. You were watching who they were when you should have been watching who you became around them. Because the people closest to you don't just know you, they define you. And that's exactly what makes them dangerous. The story you've told yourself goes something like this. You trusted too easily. You were too open, too generous, too naive. You gave people the benefit of the doubt when you shouldn't have. Maybe you chose wrong. Maybe your judgment is just off when it comes to people you love. So the solution, you decided, is to be more guarded next time, slower to trust, more strategic, keep your inner circle smaller, build higher walls. That's the conventional wisdom. And it sounds reasonable, but it's wrong. Not because trust is always safe, it isn't, but because the problem was never your trust in them. The problem was your trust in the image of yourself they were reflecting back at you. This is the diagnosis that cuts deeper, and it comes from a place most self-help content never goes. Carl Jung spent decades studying what he called the shadow. Not the darkness in other people, the darkness in you. The parts of yourself you've spent a lifetime burying. The anger you decided wasn't allowed. The ambition you were told was arrogance. The grief you never processed. The parts of your personality that didn't fit the version of yourself you needed to perform for the world. Jung had a name for that performance too. He called it the persona. The persona is the mask, the curated self, the version of you that shows up to work, to family dinners, to friendships, the self that's been shaped by what others needed you to be. And here's where it gets dangerous. Your closest friends don't know you. They know your persona. They've learned to love the mask, and because you need them to keep loving it, you need to keep wearing it around them. This is why your friends are your blind spot, not because they're dishonest, but because the relationship itself has become a mirror, and mirrors only show you what you're already showing them. Robert Greene in the 48 Laws of Power observes something strategists have known for centuries. Never put too much trust in friends, learn how to use enemies. Greene's argument was tactical. Enemies are more reliable because their motivations are transparent. They have something to prove. They watch you carefully. They see what your friends, comfortable in your company, have stopped bothering to notice. But Greene stops at the strategic layer. Jung goes underneath it. Your enemy doesn't just see your weaknesses. Your enemy sees your shadow, the parts of you that you've hidden so well that you've forgotten they're there. And that is why your enemy disturbs you in a way your friends never do. It's not just that they oppose you, it's that something in their perception lands. Something they say about you sticks in a way that criticism from a friend never quite does. Because your friend is too invested in your persona to threaten it, but your enemy has no such investment. They see past the mask, and what they reflect back is closer to the truth than you're comfortable admitting. Let's make this concrete, because this is an abstract theory. This is happening to you right now. Scene 1. You share a new idea with a close friend. They smile. They say it sounds great. They ask a few surface-level questions. You leave the conversation feeling supported, but somehow flat, like the conversation gave you warmth, but no information. Now imagine sharing the same idea with someone who doesn't particularly like you, a rival, a competitor, someone with something to gain from your failure. They push back immediately. They find the hole in your logic. They question your assumptions. And you leave the conversation furious and quietly knowing they were right. Your friend held your persona. Your enemy saw your idea clearly. Scene 2. You've been in a friendship for years. This person has seen you grow, change, succeed. They celebrate your wins. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, you notice that around them, you shrink. You edit yourself. You avoid certain topics. You downplay new ambitions because you can sense, without them ever saying it, that they need you to remain who you were when the friendship began. This is what Jung called psychological stagnation through mirroring. The relationship isn't growing you, it's preserving you, keeping you safely inside the persona they fell in love with. And the parts of you that have outgrown that persona, your shadow, your unlived potential, start to accumulate pressure, like water behind a dam, until something breaks. Scene 3. Someone criticizes you publicly. A colleague, an old rival, someone who doesn't owe you anything. They say something about you that makes your stomach turn, not because it's cruel, because part of you has always known it was true. That is your shadow speaking, not through you, but through them, because you never gave it permission to speak through you directly. This is the mechanism Jung called projection. You don't recognize the shadow in yourself, so you experience it externally, in the people who seem to threaten you most. Your most triggering critic isn't your enemy. They're your mirror. So what do you do with this? The naive answer is, trust enemies more than friends. That's Greene's surface argument, and taken literally, it's incomplete. The Jungian answer is deeper. Stop outsourcing your self-knowledge to either. Your friends can't give you an accurate reflection because they're too close to your persona. Your enemies can't give you a clean one because they're filtered through their own shadow projections onto you. Neither is a perfect mirror. Both contain signal. The work, and it is work, is learning to extract that signal without being consumed by either relationship. Step 1. Audit your friendships for stagnation. Ask yourself honestly, who in your inner circle needs you to stay exactly who you were 3 years ago? Who celebrates your wins in the present but subtly discourages your becoming? Who do you edit yourself around, not because they've asked you to, but because you sense the relationship can't hold a newer version of you? This isn't about cutting people off, it's about seeing clearly. Jung said individuation, becoming your whole self, requires retrieving what you've projected outward. And the first step is noticing where you've handed your self-definition to someone else. Step 2. Mine your enemies for shadow material. This is the harder practice, because it requires something most people refuse to do. Take seriously what people who dislike you say about you. Not all of it. Critics can be wrong. Rivals can be malicious. But somewhere in the criticism that burns the most, the one you can't stop thinking about at 2 a.m., there is almost always a fragment of truth you haven't been willing to face. Ask the question Greene would never ask, because he's only interested in power. What does my enemy see that I've been hiding from myself? Not to agree with them, not to give them power over you, but to use their perception as a diagnostic tool. A surgeon doesn't become the disease, they study it. Step 3. Hold the tension. Jung's concept of individuation isn't about becoming perfectly self-sufficient and needing no one. It's about holding the tension between opposites, friend and enemy, light and shadow, persona and the authentic self, without collapsing into either. The immature mind needs friends to feel whole. It needs enemies to feel righteous. Both are projections. The integrated mind uses relationships differently. It doesn't need a friend to confirm the persona. It doesn't need an enemy to embody the shadow. It can see both, and itself, with something approaching clarity. This is rare. It takes years. But it begins with a single, uncomfortable question. Who am I when no one is watching? And how different is that from who I am in front of the people I love? The gap between those two answers is the size of your shadow. You won't integrate the shadow in a weekend retreat. You won't do it by reading this once and feeling moved. But here's what it looks like when it starts to happen. You stop needing your friends to validate your decisions. Not because you love them less, but because you've stopped using the friendship as a substitute for self-trust. The relationship becomes lighter, more honest. You can disappoint them and survive it. You can be changed and still be loved. You stop being destroyed by your enemies, not because you stop caring, but because you've already interrogated what they're saying. You've looked at the shadow material they're pointing to. You've decided what's true and what's projection. Their words still arrive, but they don't land the same way. You've already been there. You start noticing the persona in real time, the moments when you're performing, when you're giving someone the version they want rather than the version that's true. And slowly, you start making a different choice. Not all at once, but enough. Greene would call this power. And in a tactical sense, he's right. A person who knows their own shadow cannot easily be manipulated, because they can't be surprised by it in themselves or weaponized through it by others. But Jung would call it something more fundamental than power. He'd call it wholeness. And a whole person is something an enemy cannot threaten and a friend cannot contain. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that sounds simple until you sit with it. He said that the obstacle is the way, that the thing blocking you is the thing that develops you. Apply that to this. Your closest friends are not your problem, but your need for them to reflect you accurately is. That need to be seen, affirmed, confirmed, is the obstacle. And working through it, learning to see yourself without the mirror, is the path. Your enemies are not your teachers, but your reaction to them is. The burning, the defensiveness, the 2 a.m. obsession, that reaction is data. It is pointing at something inside you that deserves your attention, not their destruction. Epictetus said, "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things." Your friend doesn't blind you. Your judgment, your need for their image of you to be true, does. Your enemy doesn't wound you. Your judgment, your refusal to look at what they're reflecting, does. The Stoic practice isn't detachment. It isn't becoming cold or strategic or Machiavellian. It's something harder and more useful. It's equanimity in the face of accurate perception. To be able to look at yourself, through the eyes of a friend, through the eyes of an enemy, through no eyes at all, and see something close to the truth. Not the persona you've curated, not the shadow you've buried, the whole thing. Here's what your enemies know that your friends don't. They know you're capable of more than you're doing. Not because they want to help you, because your potential threatens them. Because your unlived ambition, your unexpressed truth, your unintegrated shadow, they can feel it. And it disturbs them in the same way your shadow disturbs you when you catch a glimpse of it in a quiet moment. They're not reacting to who you are. They're reacting to who you haven't become yet. And your friends, God love them, are too comfortable with you to notice. This is not an argument for burning your friendships. This is not a manual for using people. This is a map of the psychological territory most people spend their entire lives refusing to enter. The territory where you stop needing people to make you feel real, where you can sit with a friend and love them without needing them to define you, where you can face an enemy and learn from them without being destroyed by them, where you are, finally, fully, the author of your own self-perception. That is what Jung called individuation. That is what Greene called power. That is what Marcus Aurelius simply called living according to nature. And it starts not with changing who's in your inner circle, but with finally, honestly, looking at the person who's been in every room you've ever entered. Yourself. The whole self, shadow included.